experience platform, and found a real need inside of the community to be able to take all of the information that we are digesting, such as expert, open, internal, formal learning, and premium content. Tons of different sources, tons of different areas to get that and access it, but a lot of it is very hard to find. And so what we wanted to do is take all 5 of those sources of content, pull them into our system, and then convert those into cards, and then deliver them across multiple different platforms. So Flip is completely device agnostic, tablet, mobile, and laptop. Obviously, we're looking through that on our screen here. And what we've done is look at a proven learning experience called the flashcard that we probably have all used in high school, middle school, college, you name it, some jobs that you use. And turn that into a digitized learning experience where it gives everyone the power to really put anything on the card itself, from videos, images, PDFs, Word, document, to entire websites on the back of the card, and continue that learning experience that everyone's familiar with today. So how it's kind of done is all of our content distribution is through something we call connections, and so all of our decks lives in, all of our cards live in decks. You can see on this is one deck line, we would say, and inside of that you can organize and distribute the cards to individual audiences depending on who they are. And we'd like to tie into other existing systems that are in place, such as Active Directories or SSOs, where we can identify the location of the individual users, the job, the tenure, the title, even that unique employee code, so that one individual, let's say you were 10 years in the business, and you're starting a new job, you obviously don't need the same learning that someone fresh out of college coming out of the job needs. And so you might get connection 1 that just has 4 of those cards in a single deck. Or me, I would get connection 3 because I'm just starting fresh. I need to know all of the information that's out there in the flip pool to this specific job offer, and that's how we kind of distribute that content as a whole. Brief, quick overview is there is overarching, we call them channels or really organizations, and then there's categories, decks, and cards, and the cards can house all of those different resources, PowerPoints, PDFs. So I'll stop there and actually dive into the platform itself. And so what we're looking at is the Flip platform from the web. And if I condense it here, you'll see kind of what it looks like on a mobile device. When it gets condensed to a certain size format, everything kind of gets displayed on the screen. And when I open up the cards, it's typically 1 card per window. But for this particular presentation, I am going to open it up. And we're looking at categories such as Welcome to Flip. Use cases would be another category. You can think of those as TV shows or movies in your Netflix world. And then dive into those specific categories to learn more information on relevant topics. And so the one that we're going to look at is different card types. So these are just the different cards that are available on the admin system that you can create and produce your content within. There's an index card that's basically your table of contents for you to be able to quickly and easily find information at the snap of a finger. So let's say I've already reviewed a deck, or I'm just looking for a specific piece of information that is important to me. I'll click on the WebView card, it'll shuttle me over to there, and you have different sections that you can break it out into as well. And then walking through some of the cards, content card is our go-to. You can pretty much do anything with it, such as highlight, bold, italicize, add feedback mechanisms on the back of the cards as well. Completely tailorable or customized. Instead of thumbs up, thumbs down, there's yes and no. And then every card at the bottom has this resource section. Because Flip is a micro-content distribution tool, if we want to focus on those little nuggets of information. So if you wanted to dive deeper into a particular topic, and we all know that the internal systems house some documents or processes within that, or videos, websites, whatever that might be, we want the user to be able to get there if they wanted to get that additional information. And so you can link pretty much anything inside of the resource section, deep links to internal LMS systems or repositories, as well as outside sources as well. Video cards, so this one will be dynamic to the device that you're utilizing. On a mobile device, it'll go full screen automatically. Or on a desktop, you have the option to watch it on just the back of the card or make it go full screen. And currently we're looking at YouTube Vimeo, but there is Vimeo as well as MP4 files that can get uploaded to the back of the cards, and you can put text before or after the videos for additional content as well. Image cards is just showcasing you can design really the content any way that you see fit. And then checklist card is different processes and procedures that you can work through. And scavenger hunts, we've seen it across multiple different use cases, onboarding, you name it, anything that involves a different checklist that you need to work through. You can put that on the back of the card as well. Question card, this is a way more dynamic piece than kind of what we're looking at, where it's basically just right or wrong in the example that we're looking at, where in our system you can do different variants or custom learning journeys based on the questions that are answered and their responses. So you can give them either just thumbs up, great job, keep up, good work, or send them down a completely different path. So after this card, there might not be any until they answer the question, and then they go down a separate learner's journey path, where someone might answer A versus their B answer and go down a separate path as well. So remediation content, you name it, answer banks. So you can put 5 questions in there. Currently, right now, we're working on getting CPE credit, where they can work through all of the different questions without having to worry about not showing the responses. So different ways to get feedback are the feedback card, long-form response. And I can type in really any response that I would like, quickly get that feedback into the admin portal in the system, and then it will generate all of those reports for you. Do or don't is a little bit more of an interactive piece. You got a couple different options that you can choose: do or don't, true and false, and fact, and then drag and drop your responses. Mobile device, obviously, you would use your finger on the screen, or desktop, you would go ahead and just drag with the mouse. And you can tie these to really knowledge checks, assessments as well, to kind of break up the monotony of just multiple choice questions, true, false. Order up, putting things in the correct order or in a subjective order, and then submitting those for response. And then the last one is a web view card, which is basically an iframe window this is our website, fully interactive, and allows you to go through all of the different topics and pages that are on the site as well, without having to leave a single distribution platform. It keeps them on that same track. So one of the great things, especially since we're all here for xAPI and wanting the data super, super important, is every user interaction is tracked on our platform, and all of the instances are set up so that you can really pull any sort of report or data that is important to you in the learner journey as well. One of the things that our client is doing, our biggest one right now is Deloitte. They use it for all of their compliance and assessment training, is they test on 4 or 5 key competencies that a certain group has to know. And based on their responses, they automatically will generate decks and cards for those users so that they can learn more about those key issues that they're not necessarily doing so great on, and then retest them in a certain period of time to bring back that retention rate as well. So any questions on this stuff? I'll pause.
Yeah, I have a question just in terms of the design process. So what's the design process look like for this kind of intervention compared to e-learning or traditional instruction?
Absolutely. So we have entire worksheets and PDFs of best practices that we found throughout the entire process. If we go back to the cards, all of the fronts are not scrollable, so it's going to be a short, sweet title. We typically limit those on the back-end system so that you can't put in long paragraphs that will fall off the page. Then on the back end, typically no more than 2,000 characters, but you can go as far as 4,000 character limit. But the shorter, the sweeter, the better, is typically our saying. And everything gets tagged metadata-wise on the back-end system so that if you do search for certain keywords, it's going to pull up any of those relevant terms and conditions throughout their entire search process. Yep. So yeah, and then when it comes to the actual design of the cards, it really just depends on the organization as a whole. Deloitte, again, since I already brought up their name, they typically will utilize on the card fronts, they can only be the titles or the icons and titles. They've stuck with that throughout the entire design of their decks and cards, but then at a level that's a little higher than the decks, they decide, okay, we can add some pictures because it's a little bit more dynamic and pleasing, but so you set kind of your own standard guidelines and principles in place. But what we can do is hard code the font, the colors, and the icon or the logos into our system so that all of the designers don't have to worry So the do or don't that was the green on the top, black on the bottom, would change to each organization. So little things like that just kind of process a lot easier. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, so we'll move on to a different enterprise kind of solution. So we have one that one that we were looking at is kind of our base model. If you don't have too much content, we would recommend utilizing that specific instance because it's just that single page of categories, text, and cards. You can distribute it the same way that it's through here. And I can't show you exactly everything that is inside MASA, but this is their public-facing domain. So all this content is available to the consumer. So they have both a consumer side and they have an internal employee resource side as well. But you can see that their platform is just a little bit different. They get a homepage for each of the individual users. And if I had this, if I signed into my FSO link, it would show me all of the content that's been what's new for me, particularly over the last 30 days, all of my previously viewed decks, so it's very easy to find those certain pieces. One of the things I didn't showcase on the other side is there's a little heart at the bottom of every one of the cards, so you can favorite your own content, and they get put into the My Favorites deck. And then, so everything that I have hearted in the past is going to live there. And I also have the ability to create my own custom decks through the little circle that's on the bottom right. So I know I'm meeting with Tom on Monday, and I want to walk through certain content or issues or key conversation starter points. This is now going to live inside of my decks. And so you have the ability to custom curate as a user as well as an admin as well. Yeah. And so this is kind of one of the differences that are here. You'll also notice that there is a promo at the top of the page. These are direct links into content that are already existing on the user's homepage. Some of the things we're working on is being able to utilize video as well as direct links into the LMSs as well, so you don't necessarily have to do everything within here. Or there's additional content or promotional activity as well can live through the promo links. So Masa, for example, you could be a user or a dealer that has particular information on the financing for one of the months as the incentives change month to month. And based on the information, if I clicked on this, my deck would be different than the dealer who might be across the U.S. because all their incentives are different from region to region. So the promo could still look the same, but the way it directs out and generates the content for you would be different based on user interaction. The last thing, we kind of talked about search. Won't put too much in here because I only have a couple of texts, but let's go and so all of these have some sort of tab within the back of the card that talks about the brand itself, and it'll pull up that relevant information to me. If, again, I was signed in under my so I can look up Mazda Engine 3, or the Mazda 3 engine. It would give me all the direct specs, and there would only be one or two cards relating to that topic. So it's very quick and relevant, easy information to pull and access. And the more that we have from the internal systems of the other organizations, or like through the deep links and whatnot, we can tie into ours and spit out all of that relevant information back in between the two systems to create the best user experience that there is possible. And then the last piece is they get something called a library. And so here you can think about branching out the content in any number of different ways. So for them, this is just a guest experience, so they just have brand that takes you to a couple of the different content pieces. But on the internal, you can think of like different products, different technology, certifications and assessments, and each one of those buckets that take you to the relevant content that's part of those pages. Instead of on this page, you basically get everything that you want in one case. So, yep. All right. Any other questions? We have 6 minutes. So, anything you guys want to see or look at? Or
one of the things you demoed for me, and I wouldn't mind showing Tom, is like you had a case where a lot of categories, like once you start getting a lot of content, what does that look like, and how does that organize for the users?
Absolutely. So I
can move it over here.
yes.
Oh, you're actually moving.
They all log in.
Yeah.
So,
bear with us just a second. On the phone. I was pulling something else up here.
all right, cool. I just couldn't show any of the data.
Yeah, no, that's no problem. You just need to share your screen. Go back to the
So this would be an example of kind of what you're talking about. All of those different bookcases you can see for them, as they have tons and tons of content in here, is broken out into their different departments and segments. And as you click into one of those, you can see here's all of their different higher level channels and whatnot broken out throughout all of the different groups. Now remind you, just because I have access to all this as a super user because I see all of the content, each individual profile will be custom curated to each of the individual user experience. So we'll know, are they a part of the R&I practice, are they a part of consumer, and they would only then see that subset of content a part of their profile. There is global content that you can assign where everyone gets it, so no matter who they are, what they're part of, what country, what code, whatever it might be. And so, yeah.
So is Deloitte using a learning management system?
They are, correct.
And a learning record store?
I don't believe there is a learning record store.
Oh, okay.
Everything's within the one element that they're currently utilizing. But what we do, because they're utilizing it for all certifications and assessments, is they create a dummy course inside the LMS. We then have it on our internal side, and then once they submit, we have all of the data. How many times did they do it? What variants are they missing? How many answers did it take for them to pass? What is the subject of overall usage for question A? Why are they getting, let's say, variant C is wrong as possible? You might want to tweak how it's
So are your data going into
it
an
is.
LRS?
Yep. So it's getting all pumped out, and we can tie in through API hooks so that all of the data then lives and shows.
Brilliant.
Yes. So,
Brilliant.
so our thing is we do have certain data and reports that we do utilize, and they're very high level. But all of the data that is collected, we typically in certain instances, we'll pump those out into either existing data integrations such as Tableau, Quick, whatever, Power BI, or we can custom create reports on a weekly, monthly basis, but it'll take a quick setup. But all the data is there. It's just how you want to ingest it and interpret it for each user. So, yeah. Great question. So, 3 minutes.
Are there any other questions? Any questions in the chat? So if you, Tyler can go back to Connect and then stop sharing your screen. Yeah, if you try clicking on that little green guy. I will just steal control.
Could just quit the application.
So when
All right. Chris, you can go ahead and start sharing your screen and get set up.
So we moved from Royal Oak 3 years-ish ago. Yep. Yep. So it's been 15 years out there. And then made the entire switch from web-based development work over to just focusing on Flip and the platform and worked on that. Yeah, so we're not really a content creation house. We can create the content for you if needed, and our guys do amazing work, but we focus solely on the platform, making sure that everything is working, improving characteristics and traits throughout. Like just last week, we created an assessment limit and reproduce that over a certain period of time. So you can take the assessment once or twice or 5 times, and then it'll block you out and re-show you that in the first page. So coming up with new stuff like that all the time. I think it's cool.
I know another question I did have is, do you guys use push notifications at all, like for the app? Okay.
Yep, yep. So we can do it both through mobile or email. So you can actually send both through or simultaneously, pick and choose. The one thing about mobile, even though we do have it set up, it's always going to be up to the user's discretion.
Right, because
so you can have an app that I don't want that anymore. But yeah, but typically from an actual acceptance rate, it's probably leaning towards 60% of the users will actually have it still turned on after a couple weeks. So it's not like 2% of the population. But all right, yeah, new notification.
Yeah, you're not overusing them. I think
yeah,
that's value add, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and they're great for, especially with certifications and assessments where you can say, hey, you got 2 days left, you need to take this. And then the promos work too. So once they come into the app, you can notify them and say, here's some new content, or please take these, you've got 2 days left, so stuff like that. Can you add layers to that content? That is, like, you have card groups that are your groups that you have set up, and you do a subcategory under that? Yes. Yeah. So what I was showing you inside of the Android application, because they had so much content, so it starts category with that title, and then there's that kind of cards that are on the original platform, the one that you access to the phone. Once you hit a certain threshold, there's one above categories, which is kind of like the overarching bucket. And that search field that you showed, does it search the description that's typed in, that's added? It does. It search everything. All searches item, or let's say you title image something, grab that as a metadata, it does titles, it does all of the back code information, and all the tags that we added. Yeah. So there's auto tagging on the admin, so you can set it to 3 different features, light, medium, or aggressive. And so based on those, you can click a button and auto tag everything for you, so you don't have to go and say car. Yeah, engine. Yeah. Yeah. So it's very, very easy.
Awesome. Thanks, Tyler. Super cool to see. Chris, I think we are all ready for you if you are ready to start your presentation.
All right, is that working now?
We hear you nice and clear.
Okay, sorry about that. Forgot about Adobe Connect. You had to run the app or install the plugins, and so. So ClassroomxINC, xAPI for your pencil. This will be. How long do I have? Feels like about 20 minutes.
Yeah, you have until 3:30.
About 20 minutes. Okay. All right, so going quickly, history of the project. In a cohort many moons ago, I don't remember when we did this, but it was a couple years back. One of the MakerSpace projects was how to connect Rockebook Wave notebooks to xAPI. We use Zapier, and I believe we watched a Google Doc that we were using Zapier to connect Rocketbook to a Google Doc, and then use that as a trigger to do some custom code and create a xAPI statement. It worked. If you're not familiar with Rocketbooks, they're reusable notebooks. They use special friction ink pens so that basically you can throw the notebook in the microwave and heat it up, and that makes all the ink disappear. So it becomes a very eco reusable notebook. And all the pages had these little QR codes on the bottom so that with you use the phone app, you could take a picture of the notebook and then it would look at little marks that you put as to what to do with them. And I believe Torrance Learning is still using that for some of their workshops and other projects. So later that evening, after the cohort, and I was back at home, we had a college student that was spending the weekend with us that was a education major and tried to share some of the excitement of what was going on, and I was just really pretty geeked about the Rockebook Wave. And as we were talking, I was talking about some of her classroom experiences, and we were trying to work on different classroom scenarios. And as we went through some of the thought processes, we'd get excited and get kind of far and then run into something that didn't work. How does this work? How does that work? And a lot of times it really just kind of came down to, is this really helping the instructor? Is this removing workflow? Is this lightening the workload? Or is this just injecting technology into education because it's fun to do that without really a lot of benefit to it? So in short, we came up with several challenges with it. And some of the challenges we had were Rocketbook, the way it was designed, was really designed for individuals. It was your personal notebook. You could share it. You could create actions that when I scan the page, it could send it to my Gmail, or it could save it to Google Docs, or start an email, something like that. Wasn't designed for classrooms. Had a pretty limited number of page styles. Basically, you bought the notebook and that was the page layout you got. And then, but really just the tricky point was it wasn't designed for classrooms, so that as an instructor, we couldn't figure out how to use it in a large scale where you've got a classroom of 12 to 30 students that you're trying to distribute paperwork out to and having to keep tabs on whose notebook is whose, and when you scan the pages, how do I know which one it came from, pieces like that. And personally, I'm also very skeptical on the reusability of them. I'm pretty hard on notebooks. I tend to not have pristine notebooks very long because at the end of the day, I'm usually running short on time and they get pushed into my backpack along with my computer and 15 other things that I didn't get quite finished yet. So the idea of them being just microwave it and it's reusable, I don't know, I was skeptical of that. So in comes ClassroomxINC. And if anybody has questions, please step up and catch me. I'm going a little quick. It was really designed to provide a similar capability of the Rocketbook, but it had a different underlying process. And basically the underlying process was wanted to work in a classroom. So I'm a parent of 4 that are many different ages. It's about a 10-year span. And so one of the times I was working on this was right in and around parent-teacher conferences, and for our kindergarten teacher, or my kindergartner at the time, and I'm watching the poor teacher pull out this giant crate of papers, a folder per student to go through the parent-teacher conferences, and they're going back and forth with all the captured artifacts from classrooms of how are they doing on this? Here's an example of that, and it just seemed very cumbersome and a lot of workload on the instructor to have to keep tabs of all this stuff. So really trying to clean that up. So the workflow that I created was you create a packet of however many pages you want. And in my mind, I keep thinking, a week's worth of pages that the instructor is hopefully able to get enough breathing room to think a week ahead, put together the content based on where everybody's at in the classroom, just select all the pages, and then create packets for all the students. They print the packets out, the students do the packets, and they maybe get graded, they maybe get processed, but then you scan the packets back in, and they would automatically show up where you need them to be. So here's an example. I got a first grade teacher at my children's school to help me out with it. You can see it's a very specific name of student number 5. On the left is the actual page that she gave me. She gave me 4 different pages, and I just grabbed one of them that was actually one of the more legible ones. And so the way the system works is I take those 4 pages, scan them through Office Scanner, create a PDF, upload the PDF into my ClassroomxINC site, and then it goes through and says, oh, this class has 25, so here's this page, and we'll make 25 copies of each page. So on the right-hand side, you can see, left-hand side is the original page. Oops, sorry, touching mouse. On the right-hand side is how my system ingested it. So it took the raw page, and yes, it was a little fuzzy when I got it. I didn't add those for effect, as are most instructor worksheets where they've been used over and over. The QR code that's up on the top is unique per packet, per classroom, per student. So there's a ton of tracking information embedded with that. And then you have the information up on top. I have the attendees up there, which is kind of a carryover from some other stuff. This was back in some pretty early developmental days. The students were given the pages, they worked on them for the week, and then came back and collected everything, ran it through the scanner, imported the PDF in, and the system processed it. And you can see the page on the right is actually the captured page that is stored back into the system. And I'll show you the website in a moment when we, assuming time permits. So that was that. While I was doing it, I kept taking these pages and thinking, oh, boy, I wish I could use these for my own notes. And then I realized I was the developer, so why can't I use these for my own notes? So made a small couple tweaks in how the data is collected. Instead of pages and courses, it's a notebook. Here you can see the raw notebook that is generated in the web browser on the left, and then the page that I actually used for notes. This was a Mighty forum, February 27th of 19. The number 4 on the side tells me that this was the 4th page in the notes from that day. You can see some of the different people, the notes that I took with it. On the bottom, I've kept the text in there just to help me out, but that's actually what's embedded in the QR code is the organization, xINC.me, the notebook, I call it meetings, and then the page, and then the user and page number. So the difference in the notebook and the page is I can actually have different versions of this page. These are different pages. I apologize. I just noticed that these are not quite exact matches because the page on the left does not have the follow-up items on the right that the page on the right does. Anyway, I've created versions of this that have kind of a loose leaf page feel. My daughter uses it for some of her high school classes, and then she actually uses this grid page. She's taken an online Japanese class, and while she's not really using it for the online capture, she really liked the grid layout as she's working on Japanese caricatures to practice writing them. So that's that. So now for xAPI. So that was the notebook, but this is the xAPI cohort. So how do you bring xAPI into it? So needed to create statements based on xAPI activity. Had definitely some challenges of what to capture, what are the verbs, and how do you link them. I think I went into this a little bit naively, thinking that it would be very easy to do. But then when I started trying to find the specific verbs and activities and objects, it became more complicated of do I capture it when the document is uploaded? Do I capture it when the document is processed? Do I do something different? I decided to go with yes. And the difference being when you're uploading it, you're actually uploading usually in a batch, whether it be a single PDF document or what could be a zip file of many different individual PNG images or whatever the scanner is producing. And I wanted to be able to both capture who is storing the document, so we know who did it, if it was a school secretary or you're doing it yourself, but also what was submitted, because I wanted to have those different context elements in there, the actors of if Mrs. Jones is a school secretary and she's storing them, I want to know Mrs. Jones is the one that stored them. She probably has access to the originals if you need them for litigation or something like that. But then if Tommy was a student, we want to know that this is Tommy's document. So that was kind of an odd piece. I had to work through this with some of the experts in Slack a little bit to help me walk through what made sense. And then kind of just continue to move forward. And I use the ADL public LRS as my testing point. You can see actor name, here's me, because it was my notebook. What would happen, it was submitted. Object name is meetings, that's my name of my notebook. Activity was what was the activity. The authority name was xAPI Tools because I'm, again, just using their generic login. Couple things left to do. I do want to try to get to show you the website in just a moment. I need to link files to the statements a little bit more cleanly so that when you're trying to view the actual document from the LRS, you can see what was actually there. I need to do some validation just that it's going to function at larger scale, just because it was a little bit of a piece, and the back end of this is all written in Google App Engine. So getting Google App Engine to create LRS statements was a little bit of a challenge for me. There's some, no pre-built libraries that I could find for it, and the Python ones are written for older version of Python, Python 2, not Python 3, which is what my project is using. So while I thought I had some libraries to use, I ended up having to do pretty much everything by hand, which was an interesting challenge, but that's what we all learned. So the kind of a demo, here's a page that I physically wrote on my desk sitting in front of me a little bit ago. So I take the picture, I scan it using Adobe Scan on my cell phone. I send the picture to the app, ClassroomxINC.com. It's still kind of private while I'm getting it built. Then check for statements. So in the interest of time, I do actually have this done already. Let me switch windows. And over here is, this is my website. Let me just refresh the meetings. And you can see here's my notebook. Here's page 120. I have been kind of slacking. I've got a lot of pages that I haven't scanned in lately. Still sitting in my notebook, but here's the image that came through, and I was pretty impressed. This is just my cell phone with the free Adobe Scan app that automatically de-skewed the image and did a really nice job on it. That PDF I just submitted on the bottom here, select file, scan December 13 upload, and there it goes. But I do want to show you those classes that I was working on. These were all done before I had the thumbnail functionality working, which is why the broken image icon is here. But I'm just showing you that here is, another student that was in there. Another student, you can see. But I like that I really appreciate that she did a whole marking in purple, just because for demonstration purposes it shows up really well for me. Very unplanned, but let me show you one more. Is that actually? Let me show you. There were just some of the different source pages she gave me. It's just worksheets that she was working on that week. Nothing special. But again, the intent of this is to really try to take some work out of the instructor's hands of having to keep track of everything and do all the correlations. So there's that. Again, in the notebook, you can see that it's here. Not faking stuff. I want you to believe that this is real. And if I go look at the statement viewer, when I ran this, it was a little bit ago now, but I don't want to refresh it because it is the ADL public LRS, and that could be 300 statements ago, depending upon the day. So, but I was actually able to, just before this presentation, add in a different activity object ID for tracking the object. So if I take that URL, plug it in, it goes out to Google Storage and pulls back the original or the scanned in image that's stored out there. So hopefully this starts to give instructors the ability when you're doing parent-teacher conferences that you can share the content a little bit better. The other piece that I'm working on, actually some of it's already built, but is the ability to actually share these notebooks so that when you're using this in middle school or high school scenario, that you could have students taking notes and sharing them back and forth. And then the other element is that because these notebooks are fairly nonsensical. And we actually recently at the university here have done some work with Torrance Learning on some VR projects. And at that meeting we did some scope analysis of, what is a strategic development going to look like. And I kept thinking in the middle of that I should have made a notebook with Megan Torrance and her team so that as we were walking through all the scenarios and the steps that she had of vision and getting people to understand what their vision and long-term goals are, could have had pre-done worksheets for that. And then at the end of that, when we're trying to capture all the notes and the feedback, been able to just scan all those pages back in and have really fantastic feedback where you could see how the ideas developed over time as you're moving forward, and then to be able to just recreate that scenario every time there's a meeting going on or a new client presentation or something like that, where you want to give them a custom worksheet or packet that you can walk through, but then have that tracking back so that your front-end salespeople could then be sharing that with the developers in the back or the project managers that have to put a cost on it or anything like that. So I am, as much as I love computers and work on them all the time, I really love using a pen and paper to take notes, a little bit more creativity and a little bit better retention, at least in my goofy mind. So I see we got about 2 minutes left. Definitely want to give people a chance to ask questions if there are any. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. Are there any questions here in the room or online in chat?
It's the end of the day. I bet everybody's mind is
right, and there's drinks upstairs, I think. So, all right. Well, thank you, Chris, and thank you to everyone that's online and joining us. Again, all the meetings or all the sessions in here today were recorded, so we will be sharing those out and.